Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 33rd episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And as we always do, today we have another amazing guest. And that is my friend, Ed Squire. Ed, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Teresa, thank you. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to read you guys a little bit about Ed, and then we're just going to get right into the questions. So Ed Squire, for over 20 years, he was a senior consultant for Fortune 500 and global companies in the United States, Canada, and Europe. He is a survivor of childhood trauma, and in 2018, he started a nonprofit called MeTooWhatNow. It helps survivors of childhood abuse and trauma rebuild their lives. And today, he's the creator and host of the Visible Kindness podcast and founder of the Ed Squire Media Video Marketing Mastery course, where he teaches online business owners how to create branded video content to scale their businesses. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. It's great to be here and glad we got a chance to do this finally.
I know. So I've known Ed for a few months now, maybe about 6 months. And I heard him on another podcast, Stephen Neff. Stephen, is that his last name?
Yeah.
His podcast. And I was so blown away by your story. And I thought, man, I really want to just sit down and talk to you, Ed, and get your story because it's so inspirational and it really cuts into so many different areas of life. So first off, you're from Canada, correct?
I am Canadian and I'm having some Canadian coffee right now.
Nice.
But I live in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. And so you grew up in Canada, and how did you get into your original Fortune 500 life and all those kinds of things?
Well, that's everybody I graduated with wonders the same thing. How did that happen? Because I certainly didn't plan on doing it. It was a very interesting career that I did for, I think I did it for 15 years here in the U.S., another 8 or 10 years back in Canada. And typically, I think you would have to get certified for a lot of the things that I was doing and get an education, but I didn't. I'm very good at learning quickly. And so much of my life back then was driven by think now and suffer the consequences later. So I was just going after the fact that it was a very high paying career. And if I could handle it, I would do it. And at the time in the U.S., when I started that was in 2013. No, not 2013. My goodness, 2004. I was in a really bad financial situation. And so I applied for a job that was just way out of my league. And I managed to get it. And I learned very quickly over the course of the first year that I was doing that I really did like doing it. I did get paid a lot, and but it was I really burned out after about 15 years with them. So it's just been an interesting journey. I think a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people, when you get out of high school, you have a plan to maybe go to college or not, but you have some kind of plan for your life. I didn't have one because I was so it's such a dysfunctional state that I wanted to, what was more important to me was how did people see me? How did people view me? What were their impression of me, as opposed to, geez, you should start a savings account, you should pursue a career, you should maybe get a house. I wasn't focused on that. I was just so concerned with this performance orientation because of all of my trauma that I'd never faced that I was very risk averse in the sense that I would try anything and worry about the consequences later. And thank God, I did well with it, but I did burn out. So it's been a haphazard lifestyle up until my recovery time, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. But life is very different for me now. I've got a whole lot more order, and I'm pursuing my own passions, and I'm not quite concerned with what people think about me anymore, and it's different. So
yeah, it's like that rat race of when you're going into your 20s and you have these unresolved traumas, you don't really know that you're going into these fields kind of driven by this need to perform and to succeed. And it's a double-edged sword because you, on the one hand, you do really well because you're motivated to do well because you're kind of fighting this self-loathing to become better and to prove yourself. So that's a benefit because you're making money and you're doing well. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're slowly eating away at your soul. I mean, would you feel that that's kind of what was happening during that period?
Oh, absolutely. I had no concept of the terminology that we hear today, like self-awareness and self-care and, these kinds of things. And everything was just driven by dysfunction. I was married for 13 years, from the time I was 30 until I was 43. And that ended, a big part of that was because of my dysfunction. It was not a healthy relationship. And, I was like, driven by, I got out of school. It's always like, oh, where did all my friends go? Oh, they started their lives. I didn't realize that, and so I just, it was, just haphazard, right? Just without direction. And it's very, very strange looking back on it now, once you have a healthy mindset, and to see what you came out of. And not everybody does, which is sad. It's not, I could have ended up like other people, and I could have ended up dead, or I could have ended up in jail. I could have, there's so many things that could have happened. And so it's one of the reasons why I started the nonprofit and the podcast, Visible Kindness, because it's founded on self-compassion to yourself. Because as interesting as Visible Kindness sounds as a name, it's a great branding name, but it's not what people think. It's not just based on acts of kindness. Visible kindness is based on our kindness that we give to others is a reflection of the kindness that we give to ourselves and the compassion we give to ourselves. There's a Bible scripture that says, that we're to love our neighbors as ourselves. And it's, coming to that place of loving, like, do you really love your neighbor like you love yourself? I mean, you have to think about that for a minute, because you mentioned self-loathing. I hated myself for so many years, and I was even suicidal for a few years. And how could I possibly love my neighbor as myself? And really, when I look back, the love that I gave out to people was either superficial or had an agenda. There wasn't a pure core foundation of just wanting to be kind to someone, because I love myself just as much as I'm trying to love my neighbors. It's a very different paradigm shift in the way you think. It's very healthy, and it's just a wonderful way to live, loving yourself and loving others, as opposed to living in dysfunction and fear and these things.
Absolutely. Now, when you were growing up, you said that you had some abuse. Do you tie most of your trauma to that incident, or do you think it was a few things that just sort of piled up and then started just stacking on top of one another? Or can you really just tie it to just that event? I'm just curious.
Well, for me, unfortunately, it was I suffered from, and still do, from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and the complex piece on the front end of that mental health issue is because you have suffered multiple issues or multiple traumas. When I have friends that are service members like yourself that come back and suffer from either PTSD or complex PTSD, and it's a very different mental health issue to deal with. So for me, I was sexually abused by 3 different men over the course of about 7 years, from the time I was 4 until I was 11. And I also, my father was also a victim of one of my abusers, which was his stepfather. And so there are multiple layers to it. I wish it was just one incident. And so I had a dysfunctional family in one sense, and then I suffered these traumatic events. And then many of my childhood friends that I grew up with in elementary school were sexually abused and molested by the same teacher that was one of my other abusers over a course of 2 years. So yeah, it was multi-layered and a very complicated thing to to nail down as to, this happened, therefore my life
Right.
went this way, right?
Yeah.
It's all of that. So it ends up being a very lost and broken and hurt person that doesn't know themselves and is trying to find their way in life in a very broken and weak state.
Where do you think was your turning point? And I know, like, lots of times some people say they have this, like, especially like in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have this rock bottom, and then this rock bottom happens, and then you raise. That's not really been my reality. My reality has been sort of fits and starts, and then a little bit of incremental growth, year after year. And I'm just curious for you how it was for you when you said, okay, I'm going to get help and I'm going to start to work through some of this.
That's a good question. I would say, I call it the dark night of the soul, right? When you really come to the end of yourself, and that happened in August of 2012. It's actually August 24th. I mean, I remember the day, and it's the first time I ever had an anxiety attack or a panic attack. I didn't even know what those were at the time, and I just had lived several decades of living a very, multiple different lifestyles. We all wear different hats and act and behave differently depending on our friends that we have. And maybe sometimes we, in some circles, we're not going to tell other people the way we behaved over here. But I lived very, very distinct differences. Like I was like one part of my friends and family knew me as a very good Christian. I was a leader in my local church, a youth leader. I traveled through Europe as a leader, guiding 13 students through all of Europe, and I was working with the youth pastor in this, and then I was like a senior professional consultant. And then there was a dark side of my life that was really involved in, the easiest way for me to describe it is sex addiction. That was really what drove a lot of the dark world and lifestyle that I lived. I'm certainly, I talk about it a lot when if the time is right and it's appropriate conversation, but so unpacking all of that when you unravel, and that was in August. I was just like, I was so burned out from trying to manage all of these different parts of my life, right? Trying to manage being a husband. So how do I act there? How do I want my wife to perceive me? How do I want my Christian friends to perceive me? How do I want, and then who am I in the midst of all of this? It becomes extremely exhausting. And so that's what brought on the panic attacks. And I just needed someone to know all of the things that I was up to, all of the shenanigans, as I call it, because I just felt so horrible about myself. I felt like I was such a horrible human being. And so, the first people I kind of reached out to a little bit was my mom and my sister. I said, well, I told them, but it wasn't really the full story because it was too shameful. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why I started MeTooWhatNow is because I'm a real big believer in, if you're a survivor of some kind of childhood trauma, you need to tell your story to someone, and you don't have to do like me and start a YouTube channel and start filming yourself and telling everybody. That was a long time coming in the process. In the beginning, I wasn't that way, but I'm a big believer in healing. It's mandatory to really start the healing process in your life by telling someone and confiding in someone that you trust. And that happened for me in the fall of 2015. So it was 3 years after I really had my dark night of the soul. It took 3 years until I met my opportunity and the individual that I, for the very first time, shared my entire story with. And then that's when, my life really began to change. So there's two significant moments. So one was in August of 2012, and then 3 years later, almost, it was also in the fall where just life had presented the opportunity for me to meet literally a random stranger that I followed out of the Starbucks and said, hey, he was a financial planner, and I saw him doing a financial planning meeting with a client. And I was like, well, I need to do that because I've made $1 million and spent $1 million. So that can't be good. I need a financial planner. And so I literally followed him out and I said, hey, any chance we could, I saw what you were doing. I didn't look at the numbers, but could we go for coffee sometime? And as it turned out, he had a nonprofit called the Brotherhood of Men, and he helped men that were just recovering from divorce. And for the most part, it was men that had children. How do you carry on from that place? And, for the first time in my life, I sat down with him and just told him my whole entire story. And that's where my life really, really changed, more so than the dark night of the soul that I had.
That is so interesting. And I think what I take away from what you just shared is that when you share your story, and like you say, you don't always need to do it the way we're doing it. But I think what we're showing is that by having authentic conversations where we reveal those sides to ourselves that we're maybe not particularly proud of, but we've learned something from, or we've we need a chance to reflect upon it. Just having another person that you can find to trust. What kind of advice would you give for people who aren't ready to share their stories publicly, but they don't know or they don't have anyone in their life? I mean, that's where I was for a while, where I just didn't even have anybody in my life who cared enough to hear, or in my mind I thought would care enough to hear.
Yes, I can relate.
Yes, or B, who I would really trust not to manipulate me or to use it against me or to become what I call the shady shysters of the world. And so how does this person who is in dysfunction find a safe space or a safe place to heal?
Well, I certainly don't recommend telling your story publicly to start off with that, and I don't think it's necessary ever. It's just not necessary.
Not everybody wants to be podcasters and storytellers.
I just really felt it was my calling. That this is, it's a whole, at some point here, I've been collecting film because I got into photography and filmography in my recovery. And, at some point I would like to create a documentary about my story because it involves a lawsuit and suing the government and teacher and all these things. And that's not for everybody either. But I think a couple of things. One is if you're ready to tell your story to someone, or you just need to unload, you need to get it off your chest. I think that therapy is an absolute must at some point for people. Mm-hmm. So if you have a therapist, or if you don't have a therapist, get a therapist, because that's what they're there for. And then you can, even then it's difficult to tell your story because you feel so ashamed of yourself, and you don't need to be, but you don't understand that and how that works. So therapist is an absolute fantastic place to do that. And then aside from that, it's somebody that you that you can trust with your story, and you don't have to tell them everything, but just a little something. Mm-hmm. Like I told my mom and my sister a few things that it really blew them away, and I thought, oh, if that blows you away, I'm not going to tell you everything. I found out they didn't reject me, and that may happen too. There's no guarantee on how someone's going to react, especially if it's a family member. That's why it's important to find somebody who's neutral, right? Who's not going to judge you. Therapy and someone who you trust. And you know what else? A complete and total stranger is what happened to me. I believe if you're ready and you want to get better, that somehow life is going to bring these opportunities by, and you just need to be aware of them and notice them, and then take advantage of it when it happens.
Yeah, for me, it was going to the anonymous groups because, and a lot of people don't know that it's not just Alcoholics Anonymous. There's Codependents Anonymous. There's Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. So there's all these other anonymous groups, Codependency Anonymous, that get sometimes at the root of some of the relationship issues. Because my issues were always with relationships or numbing with something, whether it be
Yeah.
success or alcohol or something. And so being able to go to those rooms and, like you said, talk to a total stranger in a safe environment where people really are all sharing and they're all being vulnerable. And so you don't feel like you're the only one being vulnerable, and you don't feel like you're the one unloading all your problems on somebody.
Yes, that's a big thing. And I like what you said too. Now that I think about it, other things that led me to that place of being able to talk about it was I knew there was something wrong with me. And I was just so frustrated with who I was and my behavior. I started to read books that I never would have read before. I read a book by Brene Brown that talks about codependency, and I looked at, I did some looking at YouTube. I'm sexually abused. What do I do? Or what? Just you can privately just start looking up information, and you'll find out that you're not alone, which is the biggest thing to really
Yeah, it is.
get a grasp on. You're not alone, and it's okay. It's not okay, but it's okay in the sense that there's a way out, right? And so taking that first step, and I say that it's important and it's mandatory that you tell someone, but to get to that point, there's a lot of things that happen beforehand where you just think, you're ready to do something because you're tired of your life. And anonymous groups are great, or reading a book is great. Go to YouTube or Google it, or going to a group. Just start that journey is what it is, and you'll find your way. You will.
And you're like, I love what you said about only sharing parts of your story. A lot of people don't understand that is a big part of storytelling, is that you have to frame that story and decide which parts of the story you feel safe sharing, and then find that safe person and share just a small bit at a time. And then the other piece to that is that when you share your story with someone else, be receptive to hearing their story as well. I always looked at it like, if I'm going to give of myself in this vulnerability, this level of vulnerability, I want to have friends and people in my life that are willing to meet me at that place. And so, I started to learn when I started to learn how to build healthy relationships, that's the give and take of a healthy relationship is, okay, not me oversharing, which is what I used to do. Old me overshared everything.
Yeah.
The new me is like, wait a minute, is this person willing to share as much? Maybe not. Okay, they're not. They're okay. Well, then the friendship might not go this deep. It'll just be this way. And then if it's somebody that doesn't ever want to talk about anything but like the weather, well, then they'll be up here. And,
yes.
and you need friends in your life for all of those kinds of situations. But that's something I had to learn because I didn't have a lot of boundaries. So I just would overshare and dump all my problems off on everyone and wanted everyone to go deep with me immediately, because that's how I build intimacy.
Yeah.
And because I was just so lonely and just needy and needed that. But then as I got older and more mature, I realized that there are just different levels of comfort that people have. And part of being emotionally intelligent is understanding what people are comfortable sharing and what they feel safe talking about with you and what they don't. And I think that's definitely a process, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's part of a process. I think there's a time, like if you look at it, if you draw the whole journey from, I'm completely messed up, talking to nobody, living in the dark, and if you go all the way around, now I'm healthy. In the very beginning, when you have this moment of self-awareness, and you maybe you're at the point where you're ready to talk to somebody, I think there's a length of time that you need to go through where it is all about you. And you need to talk to somebody who's just going to sit and listen, and you don't want to hear their stories. And that's okay, because you're not at a point where you have anything to give back to them.
No,
you can't even listen because you're so caught up in yourself. I totally relate to what you're saying, because there were different how I told my story and what I shared with people has changed over the years as I've got healthier. And I remember very clearly when it was just like, if you met me, like I've had some really bad online dating experiences where it's like, oh, so tell me about yourself. Well, I told them all about myself and never saw them again, right? You could see this look on their face. Like I'm thinking, I'm being honest with you. I'm being honest with you. I've never been honest. Here I am being honest. And I'm so intense, right? And I'm all this stuff. And they're like, whoa, right? And so, but it's okay, right? It's okay because you're so desperate for someone to know you for who you really are. And we're intense that way. We don't shut up. And that's why I really like therapy and groups and having that professional person who knows how to sit in that space and listen and be able to give back to you what you need at that time. And then the more you heal, the more you realize that, hey, you know what? I don't need to tell all of my story. And I want to be here for you as well, whether you're a survivor or not, because all of us as human beings, we all want to talk about ourselves and our lives. It's not all about us. And so you'll learn to listen more than you speak, but it's a process and it takes time. And it's for survivors of any kind of childhood trauma, you have to go through this process of it's the grief cycle is what it is. You're grieving what you went through, and then there's a time where you become less and less about the story, and now it's just a story, right? It's a chapter in my life. It's a big chapter, but it's a chapter, and there's many chapters to my life. This doesn't define me. Me Too What Now isn't everything that I'm all about, but you know what? It sure was for a few years.
And you needed that. And
that was it.
Yep. And that was part of your life. And now, I mean, you've even taken the Me Too and the What Now into the podcast, and now you're going into video marketing. And oh my God, it's just so neat to hear your story and about how you just transitioned. So tell me a little bit about the podcast and how that came about, and then how did the podcast sort of transition to the video stuff?
So they're all connected in a wonderful and beautiful way as I look at it, because I think when survivors do have that dark night of the soul, you start to come out of it. You're very, very empty, right? There's a lot of destruction in your past, and now you're like, what do I do with myself? I am like an empty slate. And learning to pursue life passion for me without thinking about money and status and what people are going to think of me. Just when you remove all of that and ask yourself, who am I? And what am I on this earth for? Because I believe we're all here. We're not just a bunch of, we're born, we live, we die, and it's over. There's too much love and hate in the world for this to be random things, right? There's something like 1 in 40 million chances that you're even going to be born. So you can't tell. There's life all around us. My plants if I don't water, they tend to die. The life comes from somewhere. I don't care what your belief is. But there's something miraculous about life, period. So how do we find out what it is? How do we fit in this life situation when you feel like you're completely empty and you have nothing, and like you feel like you've maybe wasted your life, like I felt I would just have wasted all this time. And in those moments where you start to go deep into these things and think about it, for me it was like, Me Too What Now was, I wanted to do something just to help other survivors. Even though I wasn't 100% whole myself, I wanted to do something. My therapist said to me, you need to do something to slow you down. You should take up something like photography or something. And I thought, okay, I've never done photography and sounds boring to me because I need things that are going 60 miles an hour in multiple different directions to keep me excited. So I got into, Me Too What Now is based on doing videos on my YouTube channel. And so I thought, geez, I really enjoy this. And I've really enjoyed sharing my story with people over the years as I've healed. And I've really enjoyed hearing stories from other survivors. So there's something about me. It's like, I'm learning to love who I am and not to worry about what has happened to me, and not worry about the future either. And this whole concept of being in the moment and self-awareness was just the hardest thing for me to comprehend. And that's just really being satisfied in the very moment that you're in right now. Like right now, we're doing this broadcast and this conversation. I've got all kinds of things I'm busy doing and everything, but I'm not thinking about them. I'm just totally in this moment here, because who knows, I could get up and I could trip and fall. And this is, you could literally trip and fall and die after at any, I mean, I could conk out right now.
Yeah.
I could have a stroke and you'd be like, Ed, oh my God. I mean, it's, I don't mean to be funny, but life is that fragile. You are not guaranteed the next moment, let alone the next day. I'm taking a long answer here, but so that's what happened with Me Too. But now and then, so much of my life has been learning to love myself after coming out of so much self-loathing. And so this whole concept of love your neighbor as yourself, and I just thought, I don't love myself. So clear. I mean, I look at my life and there isn't a lot of kindness towards others in my life. There really isn't. I don't do anything extra in my life to go out of my way to be kind to people. I just don't. I mean, sometimes, yeah, we all do, but I started making it a habit because I felt like, when I just smiled at somebody or said, have a nice day or thank you. And then they can tell you really mean it. Thank you for that. And or just say something like, I went on this thing where I was just trying to be kind every day. And I remember one day I went to a Starbucks and I had a shirt on that said, one kind word can change somebody's entire day. And I forgot that I had it on. People loved that shirt. I got so many reactions from it. And this lady, this barista said, she looks at me and she goes, what's my word? And I'm thinking, I'm all in my head. I want my latte. I'm like, what, you want your word? I'm like, what? I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, your shirt, it says one kind word can change someone's entire day. Do you have a word for me? And I thought, oh, right. And I looked at her, she was, I don't know, she was she had to be in her early 60s or something like that. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? I said, you look absolutely wonderful today. You just, everything here, it's all, you got it going on. I said, I just like this here, what's in front of me, and she was, oh, thank you so much. And it really meant something to her because she knew I was being sincere. And so that's what kind of got me going with the Visible Kindness podcast. And so the whole premise is bringing on people that have a story about knowing what it means to love yourself and how that impacts your life around you, how it makes a difference in your relationships, in your family, in your workplace. And I believe in the butterfly effect, where an act of kindness just literally ripples throughout the entire globe. You won't know it, but it does happen. And so it created just some wonderful conversations with people. And then from there, I just, I thought, well, I need to, what do I do for a job? I've always been driven by money. I want to make money, and I've used to making so much money. And I just felt like I needed to just release that and forget about how much money I'm making and try to find out, well, what is it that I want to do and how can I pursue something that's going to give something back to people? And how can I so I just did a total inventory of my entire life and thought, if I could do anything, what would it be that I like to do? Well, I love video. I love marketing. I learned a ton from my job working for all these Fortune 500 and global companies. I clearly understand marketing, strategy, branding, assessment, and all these business mechanics at a high level. And so knowing that today we live in an age where social media is a huge thing, and video marketing is a massive, massive opportunity. It's the number one form of marketing that there is today. I thought, why don't I create something where I can help just online business owners, really expand and grow their businesses and increase click-through rates and conversions, all this business talk, and really help them become successful in their businesses and not be focused on how much money can I make by selling something to somebody, right? Just to really give something that is helping them and at a cost that is reasonable, that is, all these things. And so I did create a course, but in the process of doing that, I also found out people would like to just hire me as a consultant for certain projects that they have, or can I make a video for them? There's all these different things that I'm doing now with Video Marketing Mastery that are serving people, that has really become a real joy in my life for what I'm doing, because I love what I'm doing. I'm helping other people, and now I'm making money doing it, and I'm not thinking about, the money is not the issue. So
Right.
it's a wonderful story for me.
It really is. It
you know
really is. What a neat way to just kind of figure out what you were supposed to do in life, and how you best give back. And I think that you healing and going through that therapy, and getting that help that you needed, it started you on a path. And like you said, it's all interrelated. Even the Fortune 500 experiences, I mean, that kind of put you on a path where you understand businesses, you understand how to speak their speak, walk their walk. And then you had your healing period, and you learned a lot about like the visible kindness, and you learned other people's stories, realized you weren't all alone, and there's others like this
Yes.
and this. And then now you're sort of going back full circle into the business world, and then taking some of this new knowledge that you have. And you're really a testament to sort of the cycle of life, and how people, we
Yeah, you took
constantly
mine.
evolve.
I'm
You
still trying to figure it out.
me
But
too. I think we all are.
well, that's right. We all are, and that's exactly right. We all are, and at the end of the day, for me, it's just like every day I just want to start out happy and end happy. It doesn't
Mhm.
always work out that way, but it takes a lot of work to really focus on that. And what makes me happy is making other people happy. Uh, and yeah, it's just life has become just a real pleasure and a real joy for me. I just never thought that I would. And I just don't care what people think about me. Yes, I do. We all do.
No,
But
there's your
on the
extent.
human spectrum of being, understanding what humanity is and
Mhm.
understanding humankind, we're all insecure. We're all worried about what other people think about us. We all want to make more money. But you know
Mhm.
what? That's part of the human experience. And none of those things need to dominate me, and none of those things need to define me. Right. So the more we learn about how to not focus on those things and lose energy on them, then the more we're going to enjoy our lives. And we have good days and bad days, hard days and easy days. But I never used to think like this before. It was just this constant, just never getting off the treadmill is what it felt like. And I know people, they resonate with that terminology. Just you don't feel like you're getting rest, and
No.
life is just never stop. And it doesn't take trauma in your past to do that. Just in the pace of life that we live in now, where if you have even what I call, if you have if your life has been enchanting in the sense that you've never had trauma, you've had a pretty decent life. At some point, just the pressure of life today that we live
Yeah.
in is heavy, regardless of who you are. So, it's just like I feel so fortunate to be. I feel like I'm free from those pressures in life. Where, I always say to people, it's amazing to think that I've made over $1 million, and that sounds I don't even it sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but what I'm more comfortable saying is that sadly I spent everything, like the prodigal son, just on crazy living, with completely disrespecting the work that I'd done, the career that I had, the wife that I had, just completely ignored the respect that you should have for money as you make it, and how it defines you. But now it feels so great to not have that sort of thing define me, and that I don't know. I'm kind of going on a some weird psychological
I know
something
what you're
here.
trying to say,
You know
though.
what I mean? I could ramble on. So, but
No,
you
but
get what I'm saying.
the thing is that, when you were younger, it was like you were in this just sort of dark place, and you couldn't really appreciate what you were doing even. And then you get older, and like you said, you don't totally lose what people think, and you don't totally lose suffering. Like all those things are still there.
That's right.
I just think that when you're comfortable being yourself
That's
and
it.
you know who you are,
Yeah.
you just approach things differently. It doesn't just fix everything in life, but you just approach your problems differently, and you work through things in a different way. I think, like, take
Yes.
today, I had this really crazy, long, busy day. I can't even park my stupid big car, even if it's not the biggest one anymore, in the parking garage. I mean, there's just all these things that just pile up. And like the old me would be crying and screaming and would probably call my husband, or if I had a husband at the time, or a friend, and just start just bitching away. And the new me is just kind of like, okay, well, this isn't anybody else's problem but mine.
Yeah.
And it's really not that big of a problem. It just feels like a big
It's
problem.
not a big problem.
Mm-mm. And so I think that's what healing has done for me, is it's given me that perspective. And another thing you said that really stuck with me is that you don't have to have trauma to go through this. And that was really enlightening for me, because I thought I was just like the victim and all these things that happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I went around people that had amazing families, amazing lives. And you know what? They still had things that they were
That's
dealing with.
right.
They
Behind
still
closed
had trauma.
doors.
Right. Or, there was just some other incident. Maybe it
Yes.
wasn't with their family, it was with their school, or it was something that happened, when they were an adult, that they're still, everyone, the human experience is full of suffering, and all of us have had
Yes.
trauma. There
Yes.
is not a person in life who's unscathed from something that has happened. And so I think when you understand that, it gives you a lot of empathy for people.
Yes.
And even people who are mean.
Yes.
I kind of go at with them more of a curiosity.
Yes.
Like what happened to make that person
Yes.
that way?
I'm totally with you. Yes. So we become non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the term. We need to be tolerant. For me, I'm not into that. It means I'm putting up with something, even though I don't like it.
There has to be accountability.
You allow people to be who they are, no matter what. You just become non-judgmental. You learn to love, not everybody is as lovable as other people are, and some people are like really unlovable. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings, right? No one was born a jerk. It's just like that. It just doesn't exist. We learn how to become that way through our environment. And I think everybody deserves a chance to get back to some sense of the innocence that we were born with, and that before we lost it. And then to me, I love being around adults who just can act like a kid, right? And not worry about what other people are saying and thinking. But they're still adults, right? They're still successful, accomplished people, but they're so comfortable in their own skin. Right? I'm still learning to do that, and I love it. I'm turning 57 years old on March 11th, and most people are amazed at that. Not everybody. So if you're not amazed while you're watching this, I don't care. It's just it's like, wow. I feel like I'm 57, but I'm just kidding. It's just learning to live life and exciting, excited to be alive. I was going to mention, the true nature of who we are will really surface when we do go through tragedy and go through trauma. Like if you lose everything, say financially, now who are you? How do you respond? If you suddenly have a disease or a life-changing illness or an accident or it's when trauma happens, when bad things happen, it's how we respond to them that really shows the true nature of who we are. And there's no perfection in life, but I'm certainly learning how to not let external influences determine how I'm going to respond and react to things.
But you have control of that. You do.
Yes, that's right. Like you were saying with your car, right? It's like, is it worth going through all this emotion and energy when, first of all, nobody's going to care. Nobody cares.
No.
Nobody caars. It's not going. It's going to change. It's going to do nothing, right? This outburst is going to do nothing. So learning to be calm in the storms of life is an amazing way to live. It's like, okay, what if this happens? Well, we'll deal with that if it happens. And
Right.
we're not going to, no matter how bad it is. I mean, I have lost everything twice. And I mean, to the point of where I couldn't, there was no borrowing from parents because I owed one set of parents, you know, a lot. The other set of parents, a lot. Credit card. I mean, I was so mad. There was no borrowing from anyone. It was either kick me out of the apartment, come and repossess the card, stop calling me, and go to the church to get food. It's like the end of the road. And I learned in those experiences that things like that in life can happen regardless of how well you may manage something or how good of a person you are. I had a good friend of mine who said to me one time, I just can't believe, you remind me so much of my sister. She just does not manage her life very well. This is years ago. And I'm like, and I said to her, I said, well, you know what? I said, you're very fortunate that you have got your act together. You got a good retirement set up. You got houses and you've invested in and this and that and this. It's all good. I said, but you know what? I said, all of that can change like this. You can lose everything, or if you don't lose everything, you can have a disease or an accident. I mean, so many things can happen that are out of your control. And she didn't believe that, she would always have control. I will always be okay in the sense that I can control these things, and that you cannot. You cannot. So I love being in a place where it would never be easy if you lose everything, but I've been there twice now and gone through how humbling it is for someone to, like your friends, lending you. Our friends lended my ex-wife and I over $7,000 and expected nothing in return. And you know what? One day, when things turned around, I saved all of that up and I flew out to Atlanta, and he had no idea. I sat down with him and his wife had passed away from a horrible cancer that was just not only debilitating, but just a nightmare, slow death that she experienced. And a wonderful couple. And I sat down with him, and I said, "Hey Jim, I just got a little surprise for you." I said, "Here's the money back that you lent to me," and I paid him interest on top of it, and it felt so great. And he was not expecting it, right? Just was not expecting it. And, just really changed my life. And now when I see people that are as a difficult of situation that I was in back then, and if I have the means to do something, then to do it. And, this is what life's about, right? It's not keeping it all to yourself. I don't have to be a millionaire in order to help somebody if they need rent. It may be a stretch for me, but I'd rather do that than just keep it for myself, because I believe that life will give back to you what you put into it. And so, we're not gonna die and take it with us. So you might as well manage it to the point of where when you're gone, you've expended it all. And I mean, I really believe that. I'd rather leave nothing behind than leave a big bank account. Yeah. I just, I don't have kids to give it to. I mean, I suppose I could give it away to a cause or something, but why not do that while I'm alive instead?
And get to enjoy where your money's going and how things are going.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, where can people find your work? Where, what would be the best way if people wanted to know more about you?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to know me through my nonprofit, then, MeTooWhatNow.com is all one word, right? MeTooWhatNow.com. You find my website there, and it'll link you out to my YouTube channel and everything. And, I have a PDF download there. It's kind of a bit of a story of my life, a lot of pictures and explanation of things that we were talking about today. If you just put my name, Ed Squire, Google it. I'm there. You'll find me linked out to something. But EdSquireMedia.com is my new website for my video marketing business, and Visible Kindness is my podcast. So if you Google Ed Squire lawsuit, you'll find a lot of interesting things about the litigation that I went through with the province of British Columbia and the teacher and the school board that I sued back in 2016 to 18. So, and you know what, I'm the biggest joy I get out of Me Too What Now is when I always tell people, and in the PDF when you download it, I tell people, hey, if you want to talk, here's my number, call me, right? Or here's my Calendly link, book a time. Or if you want to talk, or if you want to Zoom, I don't care how. If you're looking to talk, if you feel safe enough that you want to have a conversation with me, then reach out. And that has been the measure of success for me in Me Too What Now, more so than anything else that I can think of. It's something that there's no metrics for it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. I don't have reports or videos. Right. It's just me being able to connect with other survivors that are just wanting to talk. And so, hey, if you need some video marketing help, I'm there to help you too.
I love it. I love it. I love it, Ed. And you shared that one story with me. I think of somebody who's been followed up with you and sent you this like collage, I think, or some sort of an artistic work. And I mean, that's just so wonderful that people are so. I've gotten the same thing, like things in the mail from people that I've met through LinkedIn and gone back and forth with on things, and it really shows you the power of connecting online, sharing your story, and the impact that it's having. And like you, it's hard to quantify that in any other way, but I think in your heart and just knowing you're doing the right thing and you're on the right path. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about?
Oh my goodness. So we covered so much ground. I appreciate and I'm grateful to be on your show. And I mean, we got into a lot of things. I can't think of anything that we missed. I mean, geez, we got into some pretty heavy duty conversations there. So more than anything, I'm just grateful that we did this.
Well, I'm honored that I was able to hold this space for you. I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast so say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching.
And have a wonderful evening or day or wherever you're watching this. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.